I have to keep it up then. Oh, thank you.
We all set, Chris? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first council meeting of 2023. And welcome to our new council members, Michael and Russ and Brad. Thank you for your commitment and your willingness to serve, and I hope you enjoy your time.
Sure I will.
in council. Could I stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, Petra?
Mayor Lavarella?
Here.
Mr. Moffett?
Here.
Mr. Bell?
Here.
Mr. Berner?
Here.
Mr. Hagensfelder?
Here.
Ms. Tillerson?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
We have one set of minutes to approve from our last meeting, which was November 1st, 2022. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Minutes approved. Updates. Over the holidays, really after, I'm not exactly when sure, 28th, I had a chance to talk with Chris Carrata from Riverstone. And we have published some of his comments in the just the council. Okay. What I'd like to do is to read the letter that Chris had sent to me, and then we will send this out, Steph?
We can push it as part of the, it'll become part of the public record.
Okay. So anyway, let me read what Chris wrote. Dear Mayor Labriola, I wanted to give you an update on our progress with the Andel West development that you can share with other members of council and the citizens of the town of Kiowa Island. We are committed to seeing this process to conclusion and providing an expansion of Freshfields and new Harris Teeter store that addresses the needs of the community and is something that we can all be proud of for generations to come. We are still working diligently to address the remaining community concerns, which fortunately have been whittled down to a few. To do this, we have requested and have been granted another 60-day deferral to the March 16th County Council meeting. We have revised the list of permitted uses to eliminate the ones that the community found objectionable. We have agreed to limit the size of the fuel center to 7 pumps, buffered from all roads, and not permit tractor-trailer fueling. We have agreed to match the 100-foot Freshfields buffer along Kiowa Island Parkway and have added language stating the project will be architecturally consistent with Freshfields and feel like a single unified property. We have also agreed to the town's plan for a roundabout at the entrance. The final issue is ensuring internal connectivity with Freshfields. We are working with Edens to define these points now, which is why we needed to defer for 60 more days. As soon as we have additional information, we will be sure to let you know. Thank you always for your cooperation. So this will all become available in one fashion or another. But I wanted just to emphasize, Chris did say that he will come down
Possibly end of this month, 1st of February.
end of this month and possibly into February. And I think at that time you will see his plans, his ideas to plans in writing. So you'll be able to take a look at those at that time. So we did publish now, I do have that, the county council date, right?
Correct.
Right, that's what I was thinking of. So I think that will that's available, so everybody should be marking that on their calendar in terms of when these things will be coming before county council. And then, like I said, if you have any questions, we'll let you know as soon as we have the date. You can go see the plans, talk with Chris, etc. I think everybody knows this. Chris Carrata is the principal with Riverstone Properties, the real estate arm of the good one. Okay, the only other thing I have, just to confirm assignments for our new for all of council, and certainly for our new council folk. Michael, as chairperson of the audit committee and liaison for the planning commission and the environmental committee and the conservancy. Russell is liaison to the public safety committee, the board of zoning appeals, and the Johns Island task force. Brad is liaison to the arts council, the Charleston area convention bureau. Both of you will be on the Johns Island task force. John, chair of the ways and means committee, the state accommodation tax, and the BCD council of governments. Okay, so that's my business for today. Council members, John, you want to start off?
I don't know that I have anything to add today.
Okay. Brad?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And since this is my first regular meeting, I've been doing so remotely, which I regret, but this was a long scheduled getaway with family and friends. I would love to be there in person and will intend to do so going forward. I just want to say that it's a privilege to be able to serve on the Town of Kiowa Island Council, and I appreciate all the support that received from the community, and I look forward to engaging with community members and all stakeholders on a go-forward basis, as I indicated during the campaign. My email is on the town's website. It's bbelt@kiowaisland.org. Please reach out if you have any questions, concerns, or comments about anything. I will endeavor to respond in a timely way. I also look forward to meeting with citizens and stakeholders on a regular basis. Happy to do so before or after council meetings, to meet with Kiowa Island groups in person when they have regularly scheduled meetings, and I hope to convene a periodic town hall to meet with constituents on a go-forward basis. And the reason for doing that is because I think it's so critically important that we really embrace the community's views on a wide range of issues. We're never going to come to consensus on everything that's before us, but I think it's important to have that engagement and do so on a regularized, constructive basis. And Mr. Mayor, since this is my first meeting post-election, if you will indulge me, just a couple of other additional comments. It picks up a little bit on what you said at the outset. I do think that 2023 is going to be a critically important year in the life of Kiowa Island. We're really at an inflection point in a number of respects, particularly with regard to development issues on the island, but increasingly off the island. We also have a number of governance issues we've got to work through, internal governance issues, a relationship with Kika and Charleston County. And I think it's so critically important going forward that the town of Kiowa Island take a leadership role on local and regional issues. Kiowa Island, in many respects, is the economic engine for Charleston County, disproportionately so, both in terms of property tax revenues. We have two of the largest employers in Charleston County, in Kiowa Partners and the resort. And I think it's incumbent upon the town increasingly to take a leadership role in engaging with other stakeholder interests. I do want to comment briefly on the Andel West matter. I actually think we're at a very, very good place right now. I really want to commend Riverstone and Chris Carrata and the rest of the team there for their willingness to engage with the community in a very constructive fashion. I want to really give a shout out as well to the Cacique HOA, and particularly Peter Schneider, as well as Preserve Kiowa, for the role they played in kind of getting us to where we are, which is, I think, on a path towards a plan around which the community can coalesce. But I'm also mindful of the fact that we are where we are in part because of community engagement. And I regret that heretofore the town hasn't been proactively engaged with Charleston County, and I hope on a go-forward basis we will do so, because although this is a Charleston County jurisdictional matter, obviously it has profound impact for Kiowa Island and the residents. There are obviously a number of development issues occurring. We're still waiting on final development proposals on the island itself. The Upper Beachwalker proposals, Lot 1. There's a lot of stuff happening off island. There continue to be a number of governance issues we've got to deal with. As was discussed at the last council meeting, there were some issues that were raised with regard to the development agreement with Kiowa Partners. I continue to have concerns about a number of issues with regard to that development agreement that I think warrant exploration. We had a special call meeting to receive advice and counsel with regard to certain matters. And as we stated at the end of that meeting, there are still outstanding issues that need to be explored. I have continuing concerns, and I have continuing concerns about the validity of the agreement in numerous respects, whether in fact the agreement is already terminated by operation of law. I have concerns about the amendments and whether they've been properly entered into under state law. I have questions and concerns about whether there's an improper or unlawful delegation under the development agreement of authority to the developer and the ARB with regard to zoning matters. I have concerns about whether or not there are unlawful or improper restrictions on the town's legislative authority with regard to, for example, architectural review matters. I have continuing concerns with regard to a wide range of matters with regard to underlying zoning concepts, whether it's spot zoning, contract zoning, dual zoning, optional zoning, et cetera. And I think all of those we still need to continue to look at and flesh out because they have profound implications for governance of the island on a go-forward basis. I also have concerns that are related to that I think warrant further exploration with regard to the development agreement, particularly with regard to the town's relationship with the Architectural Review Board. And that's in a couple of respects. One, regarding the development agreement itself that purports to give the ARB / the developer exclusive jurisdiction over certain zoning matters, general lot standards, building development standards, and variances, which in my view seems to be unlawful under South Carolina law or data law of any jurisdiction. It impermissibly restricts the town from engaging in an architectural review function by contract. But more problematically are the increasing number of citizen complaints about the business practices of the ARB. And what I think we also need to look at is the fact that the town itself requires its residents to get permits from the ARB before you can get permits from the town, which I find to be passing strange, given the fact that it is the town and a municipality under state law that has the requirement to issue permits, building permits, and other permits related to development and matters. As far as I can ascertain, the ARB is not a permitting authority. KICA could be, homeowners association, often do regulate architectural standards matters. The town could assume that function. The state especially allows municipalities to take on an architectural review function. And yet what we're doing is the town is acceding to apparent authority of the developer and a private party to get involved in the permitting process, to occasionally issue fines, to require the payment of fees, and to hold deposits and then not release those deposits until, in some cases, arbitrary and capricious standards are met. And I'm not aware, but Stephanie can certainly correct this, that the ARB actually has a separate business license to operate in the town of Kiowa Island. I'm not aware that it is, in fact, registered as an entity with the state of South Carolina, either as a nonprofit corporation or as a private corporation. And given the fact that an increasing number of citizen complaints, residents' complaints, are being sent to us about the practice of the ARB, I think this is something we need to look at from a governance matter as well as a health, safety, and welfare of our citizens matter. And with that, Mr. Mayor, again, I wanted to say how much it is a privilege to be able to serve on the town council, and I look forward to working with my colleagues and again, being able to meet on a regular basis and in person with those in the audience and those who are watching streaming. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Russ?
Yes, I have a couple of things. As the liaison to the BZA, I think everybody's aware, but there is going to be a variance request at the end of this month for the significant expansion of a dock at beach at Mingle Point. I went down to the facility and I looked at it, so I have I performed my own investigation, of which I cannot participate though in the voting. But I encourage the town to get involved, the residents to get involved, because it is a significant expansion. And it's going to be it's going to be expanding pretty far into the river. So I just wanted you all to be aware of that in case you aren't, so you can get involved in reviewing what the facts are. Secondly, with respect to the safety group that I'm a liaison as well, there's a couple of things I'm going to be bringing up in the next month. I'm very interested in safety. Particularly, I'm going to be working with the group because I have located a blind spot at Freshfield Circle that we need to address, as well as we are working on the design of the new egress or the exit from the island at the front gate. I am very concerned about construction worker safety, and I'm going to get involved and make sure the design that we put forth is not going to put workers at risk, and that's going to be worked on or addressed in this upcoming month. Thanks.
Good, thank you, Russ. Michael?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to add one first comment to Andel West. I know it's a little bit out of our jurisdiction, but I'm really happy that the town is involved in this, and especially our mayor in discussions with Chris Corrada. I have met with him as well prior to the election and communicated with him ever since, and I would really like to call on Eden, who is the current owner of Freshfield, to not further delay and really get together with Riverstone to resolve the big remaining topic about the two connection points between the Freshfield property and the Andel West property. And I think there's a little bit of a discussion going on that I would really, really hope in the best interest of the community to be resolved very quickly. Very similar to this, we have seen communication about the MUSC Center, and where we have actually a similar situation where an adjacent property owner is not yet fully cooperating, and I would really hope that this also takes place in the interest of the community, because that really holds up construction for this very important infrastructure measure. Third, I also have seen and read and studied a lot of commentary from the community about the ARB, and I think it's time that we as a town probably look at this a little bit more comprehensively. And I would urge us as the council, but also town staff, to look at this in collaboration with Kika over the coming weeks to clarify how we want to proceed with the ARB topic in the future. Last but not least, a personal comment. I have seen this prior to my new role on IKEA, and since I am now part of the council, I've also experienced this as a member of this town council, that community members are communicating with us, which is the good part, but in a bad part, in a tone and attitude that I feel greatly disrespectful and inappropriate. And I wanted to call on the community to please refrain from these personal accusations and inflammatory and combative language that are used, and would really urge us to return to a civil, human, constructive and productive exchange between the town council and the community members. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Steph?
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm just going to do a few updates. We had a senior staff meeting yesterday, and I just thought I would bring you guys up to speed on a few things. If you have any specific questions, I have some of the senior staff members here that can answer those questions. From the Wildlife Department, Jim, every year they do an annual deer spotlight survey, and that will take place again this month. And of course, depending on the results of that, he will then talk with council regarding any further action needed. With regards to in Public Works Department, which is under Brian, I was told, keep our fingers crossed, that the compactor for Kessel Court that was renovated, that should be in this week, correct? The compactors. So then hopefully that project will be completed by the end of this week, beginning of next week. The intersection that we've been working on with Beach Walker and Kiawah Island Parkway, the utility company was doing some locations this week. Once they have that information, they will then give it to our consultants, Kimberly Horn, who will then be able to overlay the construction drawings that we have with the utility information. Brian then will assemble, we have a small core group that we work with. He will assemble that group back together and take a look. So as of right now, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, they will have more information to report out to council on that. As you guys know, our website currently right now is in a bit of a flux. Sometimes you click on something, it may not work, or it may send you to something really obscure, but we are in the process of migrating from our old website to our new website. So that should be done hopefully by the end of this month, and it will be officially rolled down and released. Our goal is by council's meeting in February. A lot of you guys from John Taylor's department, a lot of you guys have been involved. If not, please get involved, and I'm sure you'll have level involvement at some point with the Kiawah Next. The Kiawah Next is our comprehensive plan, and there is a plan, I know, by our consultants, LS3P, to get the community involved in that process. So they're launching officially a survey that's going to be launched on January 16th. We encourage everyone to go to the website, Kiawah Next. We push stuff out in our e-blast. We'll have some more information out this week, but please get involved. There's going to be tons of opportunity. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact John Taylor, who is here, and he can have those discussions with you. I know that we're going to all of our community partners are going to have a role in this. They're going to have an opportunity to voice any suggestions or concerns. This is a project. I should also say that it's not just LS3P and John Taylor, but our Planning Commission. They have a huge role in on this document. And then ultimately, it is adopted by Town Council. So everyone, the goal is, John has said, leave no stones unturned. We want to make sure that we get a lot of people involved in the process. And from there, that's my comments, now unless anyone has any specific questions for me.
Good, thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
Citizen comments? Yes, sir.
Yes. Larry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
State your name and address, please.
Will do. Larry Rutkowski, 232 Sparrowhawk. I also happen to be a member of the aforementioned Preserve Kiawah. Just with respect to the agenda items, as I understand I'm limited to at this point, I note that there is under consideration adoption of a marsh plan. I understand a marsh management plan. I understand that upon termination of the development agreement, the developer is mandated to convey substantial marsh acreage to Kika. I attended the Kika meeting yesterday, at which there seemed to be some reservations as to whether or not Kika would even take the land if granted. But I noticed in reviewing in the marsh plan, it talks about acquisition of marshlands through funding and in partnership with the Conservancy, and wonder if the town has considered this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Alex Fernandez, 418 Snow Egret. Mr. Mayor, council members. As a full-time resident of Kiowa, I like to attend the council meetings to learn how our government functions and the decision process that the council goes through. On some occasions, I have gone out here and with the purpose of giving some constructive comments for your decision process. It's frustrating that on some occasions, those comments are interpreted as disruptive. And I want to go back to your November meeting when I was up here and I asked the council to be courteous and wait until the following meeting when a new council will be appointed to appoint the town legal counsel or attorney. The administration blew me off by basically saying it's been done before, so, we got nothing to worry about. Well, now we understand, or now we know, that there's a town ordinance that required to wait until the new council took office. My point is, I hope that this new council, this majority council, sees the comments as the purpose of them anyway, in my mind, as constructive and not an attempt to be disruptive. So I hope that you take that as a constructive criticism of what I believe the comments have been interpreted as. And it's not ever been my intention, and I believe most people that come up here to talk either. So thank you.
Thank you. Another comment? Yes, sir.
Paul Hennessy, 12 Blue Heron Pond Road. I just had a quick question. Mr. Mayor, on the question of town council member assignments, I think the town council has done a very good job in liaising with various governmental entities relative to Bitsy Carrison Main Road project. Where does that fall in the new committee member assignments? I don't know that you mentioned that specifically.
Would you like me to take that?
Yeah.
That falls in a couple spots.
Johns
That
Island?
falls under the Johns Island Task Force and the BCD COG.
So who would that be?
That is both Mr. Belt and Mr. Moffett,
And me.
and Mr. Berner.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Over these past few years, the Johns Island Task Force has become a much more mature, sophisticated group, so we now have two, along with our former member. Okay. Recognition. Is this?
This is going to be Mr. Craig. Would you like to introduce the person? Public Safety Director, Mr. Harris.
Good afternoon. Here we have Steve Jones. He's a representative of the FBI service here local in Charleston, and he would like to give a recognition on the service been done.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Mr. Mayor, members of council, residents of Kiowa Island, and others in the audience, just want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come and to speak with you briefly. Wanted to take this opportunity to recognize some members of the town, the resort, as well as Barrier Island Ocean Rescue. So we'll let this play out, and if this volume needs to come up, if someone can turn it up, that'd be great.
We're here doing some combat search and rescue training with local law enforcement as well as the aircraft that's out of Quantico. So we're doing some maritime vessel training to inserts and extraction via hoist for the vessel underway, as well as rescue swimmer training where we'll be deploying rescue swimmers to the water to recover survivors out of the water. Everything we do here for this aircraft, hoist, or the fast roping, or the rescue swimmer, it's a discipline. And it's a perishable skill. And so you have to continually exercise that skill so you're proficient when you actually need it.
Hold, keep coming forward. He's on the deck, he's coming off the cable.
No, we really appreciate the opportunity to be involved, and certainly it's a great morale boost for our guys. Something a little different, something a little bit challenging, and obviously it's fun. So we like the working relationship that we've established, and hopefully to be able to continue that down the road.
All right, I'm gonna cut the tagline, right?
So some of the residents back in August may have remembered some helicopters that were flying around before the POTUS visit in early August. That was part of the training that we did that week. I worked for the FBI here in Charleston, but before I was stationed here locally, I was a member of the hostage rescue team. Specifically, I was a mobility operator. One of the tasks that we performed was to support search and rescue functions in the event of a natural disaster, aircraft crash, or a training accident that happened during FBI operations. One of the job tasks of the mobility operators was to act as safety swimmers in the helicopters. So after returning to Charleston, I used to be a police officer. In fact, Craig and I used to work together for the town of Mount Pleasant many years ago. I came back and I realized I wanted to give back to the team, recognizing the sense of community that the public safety group within the Charleston County area has. I leveraged some of my old contacts and made some new contacts, and decided that I thought Charleston would be a great place to host HRT to come down and do training, and at the same time provide reciprocal training to those local agencies, including law enforcement, fire, and other public safety entities. So today what I wanted to do is just recognize some of those folks that are from this particular area, and I hope this is something that you feel as members of government, as members of the community, that your resources that we use that week are some of the best that we've found. The hostage rescue team just doesn't go anywhere and train with anyone. Rob Edgerton, Mike Sosnowski, and others with Barry Island Ocean Rescue are very professional. We've used them for many years. They are extremely competent in their skills, and they're value added to our training. And I think it would be unfortunate if we didn't have the opportunity to make sure that that was recognized in the appropriate venue. And certainly want to thank Craig Harris, the town of Kiowa Island, as well as Kiowa Resort for allowing us to come here to train, to use some of your resources. And it has made us a better team, a better organization. And I think that's important because you are the community that we would serve in the times of natural disasters. So I just want to take a quick moment to pass out some certificates, and then I'll let you get back to business. But feel free to watch the slideshow as it goes on. Craig Harris, can I get you to come home forward for me real quick? So Craig, this is from the hostage rescue team in recognition of your exceptional support to HRT's mobility and tactical helicopter unit combat search and rescue exercise, August 2022, signed by Brian Driscoll, commander of the hostage rescue team. Thanks a lot. Oh, absolutely. We can never get enough of these together, can we? Thank you. Michael Sosnowski.
Thank you.
Rob Edgerton. Langdon Cheeves, are you here? Come on up, buddy.
Thank you.
Is Patrick Doyle here today? Hey, Patrick. And Ian Butler. And finally, I don't think Yvonne Johnstone's here from the resort, but she was also helpful in allowing us to land a helicopter over at their space, as well as use their conference room to do some training at the front end of this. Like I said, it was a great week of training. We hope we weren't too intrusive into the community, but please know that the training that was conducted that week was extremely beneficial to the ability of the team. And it was a really good time, too. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Town Council, and I'll let you get back to business. Thanks again.
Thank you. They're very special to us, too. So, Rob, it was a lot of fun. So the next time you're going to do this is what, in February? That's a joke, Rob. I
Thick enough wetsuits, we'll jump in the water.
Jumping in the ocean in August. Very good. Congratulations. Okay, old business. None. New business. To consider approval of ordinance 2023-01, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Kiowa Island Marsh Management Plan, public hearing and first reading. John's here. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I am going to just give a brief overview of what's being presented today is our comprehensive marsh management plan. What's being asked of council today is a recommendation for approval. And this has been with our planning commission for quite some time. At our last meeting in December, the planning commission did vote to recommend approval of this marsh management plan. And so today, our public hearing and first reading. So after my presentation, I'll ask that you open up for public comment for the public hearing. And if there are any questions as I give my presentation, I will endure those at that time. So just to kind of give the community awareness of how do we get here. The marsh management plan is not something that was discussed overnight. I always go back to the 2017 and 2018 flood mitigation and sea level rise report that was birthed out of our environmental committee, more particularly flood mitigation and sea level rise subcommittee. And this image here floats around often of what really woke the community and seeing that there had to be something more aggressively done for Kiowa for us in a resiliency standpoint. And so our marsh management plan was something that was one of the recommendations that came from our comprehensive plan update. Within that flood mitigation and sea level rise report, there were a number of recommendations that all the entities, including the town, that gave some direction of what should be done, particularly around adaptive management. And so staff took a stab to identify what are some low-hanging fruit as far as what would be done first. And the first thing that staff identified was us updating our comprehensive plan. And so 2019, we updated our comprehensive plan to include recommendations that focused around flood mitigation and sea level rise, particularly within a few of the elements. Natural resources was one of the priorities there, and that was where the marsh management plan was birthed, or the idea. And so within our natural resources goal, we clearly stated that we wanted to formalize a marsh management plan that really explored the various methods of protection for the island's marsh. And the reason being that is Kiowa has a healthy beach, and the most risks identified for the community was on the northern side of the island, adjacent to critical marshland. And so this was one of the priorities of us needing to be able to study, monitor, and figure out what can we do on the marsh side of the island. And so that's been a long time coming to where we are today. And so as a department, we wanted to be able to keep this momentum, engaging with all of the island stakeholders around resiliency, the community association, the conservancy, all the work that they've been doing within their individual organizations, the community having this idea that we must keep resiliency as to the forefront. And so back in April, the town consulted with Biohabitats and Elko Coastal Consulting to help us through this plan. There's not a lot of information or resources regarding a marsh management plan in the state. And so at that time, we decided to consult out, and they have been a critical component to this document being produced, as they've sort of led the initiative to community engagement, as well as provide us with the tools and recommendations that came out of that in community engagement. So I'll walk through just a few of the things that were done very quickly, but we did have a kickoff meeting and a Marsh tour where our team met with different stakeholders across the island. We conducted a survey where island community members, stakeholders, residents, property owners were able to identify places across the island that they might have noticed something that they were concerned about on the marsh. We conducted an in-house charrette where stakeholders gathered, we talked, we discussed potential recommendations, potential concerns, issues. That was a well-attended day and a really great day to see the engagement level of all stakeholders across Kiowa. And from there, we know that the town launched a podcast last year, and we had an episode to promote our marsh management plan with Dr. Elko, who is one of the members of the consultant team. And so from all of that community engagement, the simpler thing that we asked the community is how concerned about you about threats to Kiowa's marsh, and essentially no one said we're not concerned. There's a good majority of folks who are concerned about the threats to Kiowa's marsh, and from there we asked what are those particular concerns, and the biggest one of that would be erosion and property loss. But there are a number of issues here that are built within the marsh management plan of how we structured the recommendations around these concerns that both residents, property owners, and the community identified. So we took those information and sort of came up with this graphic here that identified all of those concerns in sort of a way to strategically address them. And so 4 things: monitor, protect, engage, and restore, are sort of those goals set around those identified concerns. Sea level rise, habitat quality, unregulated property, public access, erosion, et cetera. And so the idea is that this cycle is created. And I'll give a shout out to Dr. Elko because these are a few slides that she used at our planning commission meeting that captured this cycle here of marsh management plan actions. And so the engaged piece is us reaching out to the community, educating them on the marsh. The marsh is a very complex structure, and there's a lot of nuances about jurisdiction, habitat, the environmental concerns, et cetera. And so one of the priorities as part of this that you have seen in the recommendations is for us to continue to engage with the community about the marsh itself. And the other part of that is being able to study and understand what those conditions are today, and that's the monitor piece. Beyond monitoring, that's utilizing all of our resources to understand whether it's water levels, whether it's how fast erosion is occurring, but identifying different areas across the island. Some may be more aggressively deteriorating or eroding, others may be accreting. And so for the town, we must continue to monitor, or as a community, we must continue to monitor and understand the conditions. The protect is really where the first sort of idea of how can we make some changes. So we would look at our internal structures, or whether it's documents, ordinances, and developing some type of incentive, working with our other entities and agencies, both at the local and state level, of how can we identify things that would allow us to protect what we've identified. There also will come a time where we identify specific projects, and so that might be where we introduce a restoration project. The Conservancy has done a great job of providing the town resources as part of this marsh management plan. Is sort of, you look at a library of options or studies that can be done or applied. The unique thing is that it's not a one size fit all approach, but you would be able to adapt and look at different strategies at different locations. And so that is one of the recommendations to identify certain areas. One of the projects that has been identified, and members of the Planning Commission have seen this in community, the Kiowa Island Bridge, that public access to where folks use for the fishing, kayaking, etc., recreation. There's been trampled areas, so that is part of that, one of those concerns of unregulated access. And so that might be one of the areas identified as part of this restoration. Finally, the last component is probably the most important, is the ability to adapt. So it's not necessarily just making that decision and leaving it there. It's making that decision and then going back and start the process over again. So before you today, staff believes that the Marsh Management Plan does meet all the approval criteria, that is consistent with our adopted comprehensive plan, and it's in the best interest of the general health, safety, and the welfare of the town, etc. And I noted earlier in my presentation the Planning Commission did hear this and have reviewed it, and they have recommended approval by a vote of 6-1. And so the question that I wanted to address, I know there was a question I'll address that was during public comments before the meeting as well. But these recommendations that are outlined as part of the comprehensive marsh management plan, these are really just opportunities for the town to take lead and to strengthen our ability to manage one of the critical resources here. So none of those are, by the adoption of this plan, it isn't saying that all of these things will be done today, all of those things will be done tomorrow. It sets a framework and a guide where some more work needs to be done. And that was really identified at the end of our Planning Commission meeting as part of their recommendation to say what's the next steps. So if you see there's a acronym, the IEEC, interagency, I almost forget it sometimes, but essentially it's the stakeholders of the island that will get together and sort of be invested in the marsh. Nothing would be able to be done because of jurisdiction, because of the cross sort of responsibilities of all the agencies and property owners regarding highlands and critical area, that we need all of the stakeholders to buy in into any of these recommendations getting accomplished. And so that is what that committee would represent. And sort of the framework or the structure of that would be that planning staff will take that lead in sort of scheduling that meeting upon adoption of this plan. And that would reach out to all of those stakeholders, including our two priority committees here, the Planning Commission and Environmental Committee, to be a part of that process. And so that implementation or work session would be sort of our next charge to get to. I'll pause there and ask if there's any questions, or Stephanie, you want this to go to public hearing now? Or?
You made a comment, I missed it, John. There was a citizen comment.
Yes.
I didn't catch exactly what you said.
So, thank you for reminding me, because I did skip over that. But the question was whether or not has part of this plan reached out to the Conservancy regarding marsh acquisition. That is a recommendation that's in the plan.
Well, marsh acquisition, but I think the specifics were that it has to do with the development agreement, what's the termination of the development agreement, and I'm not.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse the two, but there is a section in the development agreement that talks about the transfer of marshland to the community association. Right. And so I think what was mentioned is how that process occurs, or if there was another option, if the community association does not accept that, would another entity as a conservancy be able to step into that role? Today, what's being recommended as part of the marsh management plan, the Conservancy was identified as one of those key partners for that typical role because of the work and the nature of what they do around conserving the marsh today. And at the time, a lot of discussions with our community engagement, the town, putting the town in the position of being a property owner created a lot of concern.
Sure.
So that was one of the nuances there.
But that's under discussion. At what form? Where's that being discussed at? Who's?
So that would be something. So that's one of the recommendations, to establish sort of a structure if if Marsh acquisition is to be done, what would that structure look like? Who would be the parties involved? Would that be a fund that the town set up? Would it be a fund that, those questions are to be answered.
Well, you're saying the word acquisition, but then it was mentioned transfer, so it's not a transfer of the land, the marsh, is it acquisition of it?
Well, transfer,
Is the intent that somebody buys it?
it could be a transfer. There's two distinctions there. I think you can say that there is that was mentioned earlier, the transfer land. Essentially, that's one sort of arm. The other arm, as part of this plan, you would see areas that could be purchased from a property owner to prevent more development in the area or something of that nature.
Can I just comment just a little bit? On the individual's question, I believe he brought this up to Kika at their meeting yesterday. And what the town knows right now is that the ARB is aware, it's in a development agreement regarding the conveyance of marshland to Kika. Right now, it's my understanding that possibly Kika, I'm not sure who at Kika and ARB are aware that, and ARB has started that process.
Okay.
That's something different than what John's talking about. But yes, it's our understanding, we don't have a lot of information at this time to report out, but we do understand that the ARB, Kiva Partners, they are aware of that. It's a requirement on development agreement, and they've started that process and are looking into it right now. As of right now, we have no additional information as to what will be conveyed to Kika, if they'll take it or not. If not, then I think that's where John is commenting to saying, if they don't, then I'm sure there'll be a mechanism to either transfer to the Conservancy or some sort. But this has just started, the conversation's just started.
All right, thanks.
Can I ask a follow-up question for John?
Sure.
It's only somewhat related to that, but the issue of transfer or acquisition. Looking, John, at the slide, I can't really tell which one you have up, but one on the Inter-Entity Executive Committee. I'm not sure you intended to exclude any specifically. You mentioned a number of different potential stakeholders with advisory roles, but conspicuous by their absence, at least on this document, are like the Low Country Land Trust and the Coastal Carolina League. And particularly with regard to the Low Country Land Trust, it seems to me critically important to have them involved in whether a formal or advisory capacity, given the fact that I believe they actually own a lot of the marshland that is along the Kiowa River. I'm not sure, exactly what the boundaries of that are, but those, I think it's the marshes that are right across from Riverview, Inlet Cove, the Point, next to Cacique and running down right along Sam Spit. And I don't know if they actually own other marshland. So it would seem to me just important to have them at least part of the conversation.
Yeah, the idea that was from the Kiowa Island Inter-Entity Executive Committee was island organizations as sort of the steering of this. And so I would imagine as an organizational structure that any beyond community organizations will be tapped in accordingly based on them sort of steering in that direction. So it would be essentially our internal structure and then partnering externally as the way it's been sort of designed or discussed so far.
Well, particularly if you're talking about acquisition, potential acquisition. I know that the Conservancy is now looking at stuff not just on island, but off island as well, and potentially in acquisition mode. But you've clearly got another environmental organization, 501c3, that's focused on the same thing, that may have additional resources that we might want to keep in mind when we're looking at some of these long-term mitigation issues.
So I just want to share one thing. I mean, the plan is not in itself about acquisition. I just want to clear that for the record, that the plan itself that's just one of the many recommendations of thinking about how can you best manage the marsh, is that's having control of it. And so that's just one of the nuances there. Yeah.
If I may say something here. So during the time on the Planning Commission, I was able to observe the work that was put into the marsh management plan. And also, as it relates to my prior life, I have a little bit of experience with those kind of sustainability-related programs. So I want to really highlight the following. First of all, the team has done an exceptional job in putting this marsh management plan together. It's extremely comprehensive. It is well structured. It can be easily communicated and so on. I don't want to go into too much detail, but this is a really good concept and framework for us to work on to protect our marsh, which is a key element of our island. The discussion also, Brad, that you bring up is very valuable, but this is actually what follows now. The plan is a structure, is a framework, also as John said, but there are now elements of execution that still needs to be determined. So there are a lot of ideas and a lot of good actions in here, but there still needs to be more work of the Planning Commission and John's department to hammer out all the details. And some of these details are easy for us, although we as a town council have to act. So John, for example, was mentioning the area around our causeway, so the bridge towards the island, which currently is used a lot by fishermen, by kayaking, by boating tours, and just people trying to observe the wildlife. But we are still lacking, clear limitations, constructual limitations, so to speak, to protect that part. And I'm really concerned about that because it actually has increased erosion at that very critical point to the island. There are also other areas where we need to come up with more detailed ideas how to motivate property owners to actually really do something for our marsh. I give you an example. I am a proud property owner along the marsh. I have, as everybody else, a large driveway, of course, which is concrete, which means that during rain and storm waters, a lot of the water just flows right into the marsh. We need to think about permeable surfaces, at least in some parts of such driveways, but me as a property owner, I have neither enough information yet, and guidance, but also no incentive to do it. So just as an example, there are things that we now need to do to really make it actionable. But the plan itself is excellent, and I would like to put in the motion to accept the marsh management plan here today.
But prior to that, we needed to open it for a public hearing, so.
Oh, yeah. Then I delay that motion.
Thank you, Martha. Good discussion. Good discussion.
Questions?
Now you can go ahead and call for a motion to open up the public hearing.
Oh, could I have a motion to open up for public hearing?
So moved.
Second? Okay. So we are now having a public hearing? Okay, anybody in the community wishes to speak?
Either in favor or against.
Andy?
Mr. Mayor, Andy Capelli, 160 Governor's Drive, a member of Planning Commission. And Ed, you might have noticed in the voting, there was one no vote, and I'll explain why I was the no vote. I agree, let me start with the very specific item. I agree with the entire marsh management plan as to what it includes and what recommendations were made. Having worked with the plan since 5 years ago, 2018, from the very beginning, all of these have been developed through a complete and comprehensive discussion with the community. All members of the community who wanted to be there had the opportunity to be there. All members of different groups were present as part of the group. The one item that I had objection to with respect to the draft of the plan that you've seen, and it's still in draft form, Appendix A, is related to the recommendation to form the so-called Kiowa Island Inter-Entity Executive Committee. That is the linchpin of the recommendations in this plan. If that doesn't function properly and effectively, this plan will not work. It has to be formed, and I would recommend that between now and the third reading, the plan be amended to specifically address the recommendation in a context that the town will, under their auspices, form this committee and manage the committee to come up with the implementation views that John has expressed and the coordination that would be worked in order to implement the plan as it's developed. But the fact is, without this commitment going in, this plan will never work. The recommendations are all effective, they're all great, but somebody has to take the lead. And I think it's obvious that the town is the one that needs to do it and should form the committee under its auspices. And I make that recommendation so that going forward, you have the opportunity before you adopt an ordinance that it's very clear as to who's responsible, if you will, to form the committee and what the committee is to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Any other comments? Sure.
There'll still be a public comment. We will still have an opportunity for public comments at the end.
Not on this.
Not on
this, but there will be at the end.
Okay, so.
But Larry, your question was answered, or from earlier? Or your concern addressed, or feel addressed?
I appreciate the fact that Mayor Labriola has acknowledged it, and it appears it will be part of the conversation, so.
Definitely.
So, yes, I do not want the relevant stakeholders to lose sight of that.
Of course.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's a little difficult for me to hear, just so I understand procedurally. This is first reading. It says first reading and public hearing. Is it intended that there's a subsequent public hearing at which additional comments can be made before for the second reading and finalization of the, since this is just a draft plan?
So Brad, can you hear me okay? This is Stephanie.
Yeah.
Okay. No, so this is the official only public hearing for this document, but next month, if it comes before council for second reading, there is a citizen comment period before second reading will occur, and the citizens can comment during the citizen comment period prior to you all approving this for second reading if you're ready for this to come back to you next month for second reading. But the official public hearing, this is the only one.
And is that typical? Is that typical of our process? Is that
Yes,
how we
sir.
want our process to follow going forward? To not have a separate public hearing on such critically important matters in between the readings?
For I guess it's two questions. Yes, this is typical. If council would like to do multiple public hearings, that is decision of council. You can have more than one public hearing, but this is our normal process. But if you like to have another public hearing on this as a whole, council, you guys can elect to do that.
Thank you, Steph.
You're welcome. We're still in public hearing.
So,
Mayor,
do we have a motion to close?
if there's no one else.
If there's no any other comments? So we have to close it by motion? Could I have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So we're, okay.
Public hearing now, and then Michael, he can make a motion if he likes for
Okay.
first reading.
Okay. Yes, I would again like to put the motion forward to approve the Marsh management plan as proposed by the Planning Commission and the Planning Department.
Second.
I have a question. When would that be?
Right now. So it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? So
Yeah.
What is the downside risk or downside at all for adding to the plan Andy's comment about executing a committee right now, or in the near future? because I think we should.
Again, the committee is proposed in the plan. I think what Andy was referring to, if I understand it correctly, is to actually put more meat on the bone and describe exactly how this committee should be established and who should be part of this. And is that correct, Andy?
No, specifically the draft plan, I think it's on page 16 or 11, whatever. But anyway, the plan sets out the groups that would participate in this committee. All I'm suggesting is that the town itself take responsibility for the formation of the committee and sponsor, if you will, the formation of this committee and follow on to allow it to do its implementation work, but make sure they have the commitment of all the parties on the committee.
Okay, so you're okay with this moving forward without revising the words that?
No, I'd suggest before we adopt it as an ordinance, we add this committee requirement, if you will, or town commitment to that section dealing with the equity or interagency committee area.
All right, so Stephanie, how does that happen?
Oh, boy, I don't know.
Well,
Joe, how would that, Joe, you want, John?
I just wanted to add one thing prior to that question. The purpose or sort of thought behind this committee would to be that each of the organizations would know how they tie into the Marsh Management Plan. So essentially, we would have, just as a town, we would adopt this, the resort, the community association, conservancy would all have sort of some type of strategic mechanism of saying this person of our staff or this person of our entity would be the serving person of this committee. The reason why that implementation meeting day one was recommended for us to kind of nail down those details. But as far as the structure is concerned, that would be determined by each of the organizations.
Well, as I'm understanding, though, the question is to create essentially a formal structure, which is almost like, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that he's really looking for the town to almost create a charter.
That was
and within that charter, there's designated organizations, not specific names, because organizations can designate whomever they want to be part of that committee. But that the town creates a committee. The town essentially just spells out, not appoint, like we have done with like BZA or Planning Commission, but essentially just create a charter that states that these entities will be involved and they will designate whomever they would like, and then there may be some ground rules or some objectives that's outlined. If that's what they're referring to, Joe, in regards to this, if this is something that council would like for us to consider coming before second reading or a second reading, how do we add that into this plan,
Make
though?
a motion to amend.
Yeah.
I understand that part, but I'm just saying, when they come back for next month, it's just some language that John would add, that the charter would be created by once adopted and all that? Okay.
I would suggest that, I don't know that there's enough solidity to make the motion today.
Right.
But you can certainly make a motion to amend. You could do it on second reading, perhaps.
Well, we should have words, though, at least in the draft format, by the time the second reading.
Of course.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, all right, so who's going to do that?
So then they would either have to amend the motion today, or you're saying they would wait until second reading and amend?
It sounds like second reading might be a little more, make more sense, because to know exactly what you want to
Or would
say.
the motion today be amended to have staff work on creating language in relation to a charter that would be incorporated or something?
So Stephanie, just a question then, kind of following up on Mr. Capelli's comments as well as Russ's questions.
Yes.
I guess now, while the overall framework and as a draft, I think I agree with everything that Michael had said about it. I'm less clear now about the function of this inter-entity body, entity, the Island Executive Committee, as to whether it's a decision-making body or it's simply an advisory body to the town? Who is ultimately responsible for kind of implementation and execution of any recommendations that come from this? And is the town unilaterally have that authority, or is it intended that this body collectively is the decision-making body? And if that's the case, is it by consensus? Is it by majority vote? How does that, what's the expectation as to how that all works?
So I think, Brad, you bring up a good point, and I think that's what Joe recommends, is that because we don't have enough information right now, that at second reading that maybe the mayor directs the council liaison to work with Mr. Taylor and myself and Joe, and maybe we come up with some sort of draft based on what we hear today, so that at second reading you would essentially have to amend to incorporate whatever language.
Some more specific.
Yeah.
Would you see? I think, John, what I don't understand, I think there's everybody's in like general consensus, a general agreement about this. Why was Andy's vote the nay vote with 6? I mean, that makes such eminent sense to do what Andy's suggesting. What was the hesitancy on the part of the Planning Commission not to do that? Because I think I'm agreeing with everybody. I think we should have that. There should be some concrete language or charter or something that really puts the substance to this whole thing, because this is of critical importance. I guess I missed. Okay, how's it going to work?
I think it was the understanding of the commission sort of as a whole that there was a much more information that needs to be divulged from entities, and so to establish a group and not have the formalities of, is this a recommending body? Is this, like, let that committee kind of help have some input to determine all of those things of next steps. Because essentially you form the committee and saying now the town has already taken lead by establishing the Marsh management plan. By having the committee being birthed out of the town, is the town now responsible for execution of all of the recommendations? And so that was not the impetus of forming this committee, but more so having the entities have stake in their own plans that they would be able to buy into, because essentially we would need their cooperation for recommendations to get passed.
So can I ask a question just kind of along this? And Mr. Capelli, I don't mean to oversimplify what you said, but is what you're doing just looking for somebody to kind of drive the bus on this committee to be sure it gets done? Is that the gist of it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because right now, if you read it, it reads really nicely, but it's like, so who's going to make sure this gets done? And what you're saying is make the town responsible for that.
Well, not only responsible, but if you look at the plan, it makes the entities responsible in their own right to execute the plans, not to implement, not to design it, but to execute.
Right, but we need somebody to drive the bus.
So somebody's got to lead under the auspices of the town. Somebody's got to drive the bus. You're right.
Okay, so John, could you?
So
your last paragraph, governance structure needs to be formalized and should engage in open conversation, express concern, blah, 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 blah. Could between now and another month, another paragraph to talk about the driver of the bus, meaning, add substance to this document? I don't know that we're talking about changing materially the document itself, but I think it's putting that clarity on the end of your on the end of this, and we could, I don't know if we need to have a public hearing on that. I think it just needs to be done, and we can discuss it next month.
Yeah, we don't have to adopt this in February. We need more discussion in terms of who's going to drive the bus, because it's very similar to our sea level flood mitigation plan.
All of those things.
Which was an adopted plan, but not one specific organization is driving the bus. We all have our individual parts, but collectively we work together, right? And so I think what I'm hearing maybe is that we have to get some direction for staff. Is what is it that you guys as a whole want us to do? Do you want us to create essentially a committee where the town is truly driving the bus, or is this just, it's an advisory committee?
Can I
I don't know if you want.
at least from my point of view, being partially involved in these discussions, it was clear to me at least, and I think to the majority of the Planning Commission members, that because we have started this Marsh Management Plan, the town is in the lead. But of course, we only have a certain framework of jurisdiction, so we need others to be part of it, and Kika being the most prominent partner, of course, and the resort and others. So the plan, the framework that we have in front of us clearly suggests and recommends that we have such a committee. My understanding was clearly under the lead of the town, which does not mean the execution. I come to this in a second, but the town is the initiator of this committee that helps us to bring all the different parties that are responsible for dealing with the marsh around the table and then discuss the details of execution, which then, of course, will fall partially in the jurisdiction of the town, sometimes Kiowa, sometimes property owners like the partners, like the resort, or individuals like me. So the plan that we have in front of us right now clearly recommends to build this committee. What Andy was suggesting, I believe, is to put a little bit more meat around the bone and said, okay, clearly, who has the lead, who should be around this committee, and what are the responsibilities of everybody in this committee. And from my point of view, I think it would be easy for us to add that to the ordinance draft that is in our documentation here. There's one paragraph who clearly says, this is what we intend. This is the leadership that the town will bring to the table. These are the other constituencies that should be part of that committee that we are inviting to join, so to speak, and define the actions that then needs to be executed by the town council into an ordinance or into other measures, and the same with the other partners that are sitting on this committee. So I would agree with Joe that the second reading would give us enough time to draft this additional paragraph and put it into the ordinance that is in front of us right now.
I would think
So,
Sounds fair.
very good. So what do we do now? So we have a motion and seconded. Do we?
Yeah, it sounds like there's not going to be an amendment today, so we can if there's any other discussion.
Right, correct.
But if there isn't, then we go ahead and have the vote. Or another amendment.
Or I can amend my motion by saying, let's approve the first reading with the condition that we are adding this paragraph to the second reading.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right.
I think that's the proper.
Yeah.
Andy,
Excellent,
would
sure.
you be happy with that? Okay,
So that's your motion?
that's my motion.
And
Just a clarification question, please. Is then the motion, the first reading, is this no longer than a draft? It's labeled a draft. We're saying we're taking the draft off of it, and this is the document that the council is approving on first reading. And then it's expectation right now that it will be subsequently amended at second reading.
Correct.
Yes.
yeah. Yes.
But it'll still be draft
It's still
until
draft.
adoption, so it's essentially, you'll have an amended draft.
Right. It's still a draft technically it's still a draft until council finally passes it and makes an adopted document, but but yes, what you said is fine.
Okay.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, the motion with that amendment.
Is the second
And then,
agrees to the amendment?
I do, yes.
Okay.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you.
Just one comment. I think what I heard is right, but what we're really doing is you're adopting today the law or the ordinance, and then you're gonna have, as it develops, you're gonna have the regulations. Just like the federal government, they have the law and then they have the regulations.
Yeah.
What John is proposing is the committee is gonna overlook the management or design of the regulations is to be set up as this interagency committee. And they're gonna have to buy into it because they're gonna be the ones responsible to implement the plan. But that would be in effect in the regulation.
Right. I think so, right?
I wasn't paying attention. Yeah, we can go.
Well,
Yeah. we can go on
at this
to the
point, we
next.
have the plan. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
we're into
There's,
the-
there's still a lot of
There's
moving
still work
parts
to be
to
done.
it. We're gonna have a comp plan that it's gonna be partly adapted into, so there's a lot of moving parts still.
And Andy, we could discuss this tomorrow. It's not on the agenda, John, but maybe we can find a way of doing it, or
That's a
making
good
sure that you see it before it comes to the second reading so that you can provide your input. Would that
And-
be sufficient?
Yeah, that's a good idea to put it on the planning commission document where they can have this discussion.
You okay?
We'll have to amend our agenda for tomorrow.
Well, I'll do it afterwards.
John, the good news is everybody knows how important this is, and everybody's trying desperately to make it right. So I think that's how we should, let's set it with that. Okay. Tab 3, our 2023 meeting schedule. These have to be approved? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, any comments, discussion? Everybody had a chance to look at this in your calendars?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I would like to appoint John Moffett as Mayor Pro Tem. Do we need a motion for that, or do we need?
Yes, we
Oh,
do.
could I have a motion? Or in case I'll make the motion. Can I make a motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're part of council. You can
I'll
make
make a motion to appoint John Moffett as Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Congratulations. Could I have a motion to reappoint Deruta as our town finance director?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Congratulations. Could I have a motion to reappoint Petra as our town clerk?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Congratulations, you've been reappointed as town clerk. There are council's art and cultural events council membership. We do these all at once. Audit committee membership. Oh, they're highlighted. Okay, I'm sorry. So in the art and cultural events, there are not any new members. In the audit committee, there's Mark Reynolds, who's a new member. Public safety, there are not any new members. And in SATAX, there are not any new members. So could I have a motion to appoint the membership to these 4 committees, councils?
Yes, so moved.
On the second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Could I have a motion to go into executive session pursuant to section 30-4-70A1 of the South Carolina Code to conduct an annual review of the town attorney?
Can I have a question? What is the annual review entailing? Is it like a performance evaluation, or?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a performance evaluation?
Yes.
All right, so so moved, I agree.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any issue with going into executive session to discuss the performance review of the town attorney. The issue I have is whether this is appropriate or premature, given outstanding issues related to
Did you mute him?
fourfold.
You
One is to whether that contract was lawfully entered into, given ordinance 2-504, which empowers the newly elected council to appoint the town attorney, and also given issues related to the termination provisions that were in and questions that were raised at the November meeting, again, given the language of 2-504. I also have concerns about the review process that was undertaken to draft this agreement, particularly given the fact that apparently, and Stephanie can correct me if I'm wrong, that Labor Council had not previously reviewed this agreement, that it was negotiated between staff and the incumbent town attorney. And the Labor Council was not brought into this until the day of consideration by the town on November 1st when the contract was approved. I'm also concerned about the absence of what I consider to be some standard provisions in consulting agreements, reps and warranties, termination clauses, and other related provisions. And there are also a number of questions, and I know one of my fellow colleagues have raised a number of very good questions regarding a number of aspects of the agreement that was approved. So given the fact that all of those are still unresolved issues, my question is whether in fact it's timely and appropriate to go into executive session now to discuss the performance review unless and until those issues are addressed.
Thanks, Brad. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to go into executive session. We've had discussion. Any other comments? All in favor?
Can I ask another question, please? So
sure.
It was my understanding, though, that we still have open issues about the contract. Are we going to discuss this as well in the executive session or afterwards, or how do we proceed with those? There have been recommendations from the labor lawyer after he now has reviewed the contract. There have been input from Russ, Brad, and myself to the contract in terms of process. In the beginning, sloppiness of wording that has now been corrected, but also absence of certain paragraphs or conditions that should be part of the contract. So when are we going to discuss
So the executive
those?
session is just to discuss his performance,
Okay.
not the contract.
Okay.
Ultimately, you guys got the opinion of our labor attorney, and he gave you all, I believe, 2 or 3 opinions, but ultimately he had said that you as council can go and still reappoint Joe as the town attorney if you so choose to do that, and then you can renegotiate the contract either immediately or next year or towards the end of this year when it's time to renegotiate his contract. So it's up to you, it's up to council and how you guys want to proceed, but the executive session is only to discuss his work performance.
Stephanie, just to clarify, the letter from the labor attorney was not an opinion of council. It was simply a letter from the lawyer whose task was looking at several issues and making certain recommendations. That's all they are, is recommendations. So that really doesn't address kind of the questions that Michael is posing. And the other issue I now have is that letter was characterized as governed by attorney-client privilege. You've now conveyed certain of those recommendations. Does that mean we've kind of opened it up to discuss publicly all the issues that council members have raised and that the attorney has commented upon?
It's up to council, since I'm not part of council. It's up to council if they want to vote to open that up. But right now,
Stephanie, what I'm saying is you just did. I'm
not part of council, but I would say right now, Brad, the only thing I have right now under new business is the reappointment of the town attorney. It's up to you all right now if you would like to not go into executive session to discuss the reappointment, or if you want to continue the discussion. Obviously, it's you 5 have to make that decision. I'm not part of that decision.
Okay, just to clarify though, Stephanie, you publicly stated what some of the council's recommendations were. So my question or concern or issue is that has effectively waived the attorney-client privilege, and that any and all matters related to the letter from council are sent fair game for public discussion at this juncture.
Right.
Brad, I will bring up that on the Freedom of Information Act 30-4-70, I understand everything you're saying, but from that article states, I quote, discussion of negotiations incident to propose contractual arrangements. That says those meetings can be closed to the public. So I don't know how that would override whether Stephanie did or did not open the door, but that's what the Freedom of Information Act states. It says the discussion of negotiations may be closed to the public.
And that you're absolutely right, Russ. The issue is there with regard to A1 is that there are, or is that A2, that there aren't currently any discussions or regarding negotiations because the contract was already purportedly approved or was approved. Whether that approval was in fact lawful under the town's ordinances is a separate issue, but there are currently no negotiations or discussions regarding the contract.
No, agreed, but we were talking about the terms, and anything that is going to be discussed with respect to revising those terms would be a proposed contractual arrangement that's going to be altered. So I think that FOIA clause would still govern. That would still require us to be in a closed session.
Russ, just to be clear, it doesn't require us to go into executive session. That provision of state law are instances in which the council is allowed to, notwithstanding the open meetings provisions of the state statute, to go into executive session. I would wholeheartedly agree that dealing with employment or personnel matters is one of those where routinely you do go into executive session. But even in that instance, it's actually not required by the statute.
So we get that it's not required, but I think we're kind of going around in a circle here. We right now what we have on the table is an executive session to evaluate the town attorney's performance so that we can make a determination as to whether to reappoint him or not.
Exactly.
Secondly, we have then a discussion that needs to be held with regard to the terms of the contract, and are we satisfied with the terms as they stand today, or do we want to renegotiate some? And we can have another executive session potentially in February or at a special call meeting to discuss that if we so choose. I think we don't need 10,000 words to get to the same spot in the circle.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we still have a motion and seconded, and you had asked a question, Michael, I think. Is that clarified?
It is. My first question is clarified. Based on the answer to that means we are now going into executive session if we approve for the performance review.
Right.
I have a question as it relates to such performance. So can I address Joe directly with this question?
We
Isn't that supposed to be an executive session?
We aren't going into.
Okay.
What's the question?
Well, I assume Joe is not going to be in the executive session.
Correct.
So that's why I have to ask my question here.
Okay.
To understand this. So, but Joe, correct me if my recollection, is not correct. But my understanding was that there was a contract provided for your services first to the Ways and Means Commission and then to Town Council, which included at the time some significant errors. And for example, it was stated in that contract at that particular time, it's corrected by now, but at that particular time, that your compensation would be $7,500,000, which of course is not correct because back at the time, it should have been reading 7,500 or 7,500, but not 7,500,000. First mistake. Second mistake, at that time, is that actually the $7,500 per month is the incorrect amount, because in the negotiations, my understanding was it was already agreed that the monthly amount for 50 hours per month, I believe, was 10,000. So there were two quite significant compensation-related mistakes in the document presented to the Ways and Means Commission and to the council at the time in November, or end of October and then November. And at least I was told that you reviewed the contract before it went into, or it was negotiated with you, before it went into these commissions. So how could it have happened that these two examples of significant mistakes could remain in that document for approval?
I guess we missed them. I guess they were typos.
Yes, and
as you said, they were pretty obviously typos.
yeah, I mean, I saw them right away, so yes, but how, my question is different, Joe. My question is, how could a contract like this make it into a decision process? If that would have been my contract, it would have never happened. Because
So I think your question really is to the Ways and Means Committee and the Town Council, is how could those two entities have let those mistakes get through?
And Michael, I bear as much responsibility. I missed them too. We all bear responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a typo. I didn't catch it. You caught it. Good. It was certainly nothing was intended. And anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, the members of the committee, we all missed it, I guess. Glad you caught it.
We have a motion and a second.
We had a motion and second.
Sorry.
And I think we voted. Didn't we not?
No.
No. All in favor of going into executive session?
Aye.
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 Okay. This won't be long.
So just so that you all know out here, when we go into executive session, even though you can't hear us, you guys are out here talking, it's still live streamed. So last meeting, I heard people were like, some of our conversations picked up, so they didn't realize that.
We will have an opportunity for further.
Oh, yeah, when we come back, we finish up the agenda, but sometimes there's conversations going on, and it's getting picked up, and so people are texting us like, you want to talk about, you can talk about council, just don't talk about me, please, no. Hopefully, it may be about 15, 20 minutes. No, we're not.
All right, Mayor.
Sit around, I'll read about it.
Yes, you know, I don't know,
Sometimes
15 minutes.
Sometimes they go on for an hour.
She said 15 minutes.
15 minutes might be short.
I don't think 15 minutes.
You can almost be sure it takes them 15 minutes to get it down.
Well, because I went on to make a phone call. I didn't know how long the break was going to be. And then the doors automatically locked at 4 o'clock. I was standing right outside the door, and I heard, look up.
Which door?
The front. It closes. Fortunately, someone was walking by.
But it's not 4 o'clock yet.
I think that one you can get, you know, it does say on this side, exit.
Yeah, I was thought that was as far as up here, but I never tried to do that. Well, I'm gonna call it today. You sure you want to be attorney for this?
I thought that's what they're gonna ask.
I gotta say my opinion, but it's gonna be an interesting year.
Which is hard to do.
Dealing with the new council.
You know, if they don't really want to get more.
You take 45 minutes to say what you can say in 5 minutes. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not.
If we don't hear my issue, work through them during the course of the year. And he's got a right to do that, so.
Well, as we said, just, goals. What do you want?
Yeah.
Other than just broad goals.
Yeah. And that's what's good about Russ, because he can tend to, what do you want? What's your goal?
You and Madeline are her things.
Give me a specific.
I'm gonna sit here.
No promise.
All right, I'm gonna run. Take care.
And Brad stole a lot of my thunder in his opening remarks.
Are you speaking at the end?
take care of you. I'll give him a little more time. Yeah, I know the meeting went too long with not hearing any better and hearing.
Well, you know, one of the things that Joe, you think they could have like a situation where they start the meetings a little earlier and just go in and do executive session right off the bat on whatever's on the agenda, get it out of the way, and then we all come in, we don't have to sit around.
I think they should do it. I think they should do it last. I'm on the board, but and we have to go into executive session when we're talking about something that really matters. Any sensitive issue, harassment or something. We go through all our agenda meetings and then go into executive session.
Because it kind of, whenever they go to executive session, a lot of public comments, like mine, want to go away.
I have a question. I understand what the running was. First, we have there's a lot of money. Does the fact that the Marsh management plan gets amended at the second reading, make it the first reading?
No.
No?
Does it depend on the, shall we say, the severity of the amendment? They kind of change the whole thing. I mean, is there a point where it's not an amendment?
Yeah, but no one can identify that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then I don't know what a lot of that discussion was.
I think, first of all, everybody agreed that that paragraph is needed, so I don't think it's going to make a nice result. It's just a good clarification. It's just me, but one of the things about implementation, whoever's party's getting either a request or a change or whatever it is, obviously that party has to agree with it, whether it's a homeowner. And so what, they're going to work together, so I can see a lot of negotiation in this process when somebody wants to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even, it's not clear to me what the issue was, but,
It was,
so I hope that they can hammer it out.
and it was inane enough that they'll fight and just do it.
But I mean, March management plan?
Well, it was obvious that the town was going to leave it, right? I
Well,
mean,
I guess not obvious to Mr. Taylor.
I'm trying to, well, I think I'm redesign. Codifying that, I think it was applied, codifying this.
Yeah, I mean, I understand.
I have a couple visions, but I think I'm redesign.
You want some, and I probably started from JT, so the town has ultimate responsibility. Yes.
Oh.
You hesitated too long, Madeline. Yeah.
So, Stephanie,
Yeah.
we need a motion to go back into regular session?
I would go ahead.
Stephanie, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, we just can't see you yet.
Okay, I just, I don't have a view of the conference, the main room anymore, it disappeared.
Michael is working on that right now.
Okay, could I have a motion to go into regular session? Is that what
We
Barbara's?
need that motion?
Just for right now, until we figure out how we're gonna do this, I can just go ahead.
Okay, I move
Okay,
we
we'll
go
just
back to
proceed.
regular session.
Okay, we're in
Aye.
We obviously had a long discussion relative to this issue. No decisions were made, no action was taken, and okay, that's what we did in executive session. So could I have a motion for reappointment of the town attorney?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Is there, I thought,
We got your back now, Brad.
Is there what?
There we go.
is there some clarification
After the vote?
around that was going to be offered?
After the vote? Yes?
Okay, all right.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Any discussion?
No.
No. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays?
Abstain?
Abstain. Okay. Congratulations, you're reappointed as town attorney. We will start as soon as possible, and I will share with you all that we discussed and some of the issues that were brought up. So that can be fair enough. Okay. Council member, anything else to add? John?
No.
Brad?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Russ?
No.
Michael?
Just quickly, first I wanted to thank Petra for providing us with all the documentations a little bit more ahead of time. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Always.
That was it. Thank you. Sorry.
That's it. Citizen comments. I love you.
I see the expression of fatigue on your face, Mr. Mayor. I promise not to be long. But having stayed around all this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Larry Rutkowski, 232 Sparrowhawk, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm also a member of Preserve Kiowa. While it seemed like a long time ago today, Mr. Belt made some comments that I'd like to pick up on, and if I could, amplify. Among them was all the concerns that so many citizens and homeowners here in Kiowa have with respect to ARB, and given the town's leadership role on so many issues, I would like to ask the town to consider, consistent with what Mr. Belt said earlier, ask the town to take the lead and hold a public hearing or sponsor a public hearing on the issues surrounding ARB. Well, arguably there may be some closer connections to Kika than there are to the town. Ultimately, the ARB is derived from the development agreement to which the town is a party, and I would like to see it take the lead. I should have said this earlier, but I'd like to congratulate the new members of the council on their election, and hope what we're going to see is a renewed commitment to transparency. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Wilson on his reappointment, and look forward as a citizen to hearing more from him during the course of the year. I think there are a lot of other things that I could talk about right now. Lot 1, what's going on with respect to Lot 1? I'd like to hear more from the town about that. I think there's a fair degree of confusion in the community as to exactly where we stand. I can take up some of these issues at our next meeting when there are perhaps more people here than there are now, and when you're less fatigued. I do now want to revert to a totally different subject. I'm speaking on my own behalf, not representing any views to be articulated or as may be articulated by Preserve Kiowa going forward. I was unable to attend the meeting that I believe the Arts Council had on the potential of a performing arts facility on Kiowa. And I just want to alert the town of my view, and I think it is representative of others, that this is not necessarily something that the town is going to be able to afford. Without the help of maybe an angel investor, I don't know, the resort perhaps. Maybe it could be built on the Andel West parcel, I don't know. I don't have all that information, but what information I do have is based on my experience. I happen to be on the board of directors of a regional performing arts center in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and I'm a trustee of the New Jersey Symphony. I'm a little bit peripatetic, don't spend all of my time down here. These are functions that are difficult to fund in this day of age, speaking particularly of the Performing Arts Center, of which I'm a director. I also happen to be the treasurer, and on the development committee. That particular Performing Arts Center is in a very culture-rich area, which means we have competitors like the Boston Symphony at Tanglewood, but also means we can attract a lot of people because there are, quite frankly, more arts consumers there, at least performing arts consumers there, than there are here from my experience. I've been to a number of Arts Council's events with my wife, and I really praise them for their work. So I'm not a naysayer on the arts. I just know what it cost. And I can tell you, with quality performances in a quality venue, without significant governmental and private support, performing arts centers will struggle in this day and age. My personal opinion is this isn't the right market for it. We can't attract the right talent to perform at prices that our constituents, our residents, will pay. As I said, I've been to performances or other speeches, what have you, promoted by the Arts Council. They were either free or of a nominal value. I know the town subsidizes them, but if all the town can charge is $10 to get someone to see a classical pianist at the Lutheran church, you are not going to be able to pay for a performing arts center here. Thank you.
Just to clarify, in certainly Stephanie, Brad, Ruthie, it's to conduct a study. No, there's no prejudgment on this, and we just felt last year that it was the time to do a study. Nothing more. So I think the conclusions may be exactly what you're saying, Larry. I mean, I would not be surprised if they are, but that's all.
Yep.
I thought, and speaking myself, the community, broad community, had owed us to make that investment. So we invested in a consultant and we're doing a study. It's taking time, it took money, and we'll see. That's all.
I understand that. I probably wouldn't have been in favor of spending what was it, $75,000?
I think that,
on a consultant, probably because in my position as a director of this other arts center, I have spent no fewer than 20 hours in 3-on-1, 4-on-1 conversations with consultants.
I understand.
I could have probably, had I been paying more attention, and I'll apologize for this, I could have probably contributed more on the subject earlier, and I'm happy to get more engaged with the Arts Council. I'm just very pessimistic, and I'm just shooting up a flare, because I'd be the first one if somebody said, "Oh, would you like a performing arts center at Freshfields?" I'd be yeah, because I go to them. I'm also willing to pay the price that ticket prices normally are, and I don't think many of our full-time constituents are.
There are a lot of flares in the air.
I think Mr.
And
Bell wants to comment.
Mayor, may I don't have any visual, but if I could actually pick up on your comments in response to what Mr. Rukowski was talking about. And Larry, I'm actually the new Arts Council liaison, so I've been kind of thrown headfirst into the middle of some of these issues related to the Arts Center. I've had the benefit now of spending a little time with the consultant and also talking to some other stakeholders, Art Council members, and some of our other stakeholder interests around the island. And to echo the mayor's comments, I for, at least from my standpoint, as kind of the liaison and somebody who's been going to be increasingly involved in these, I think we want to be extraordinarily thoughtful and deliberative about this. I'll share my bias, which is I think the Arts Council puts on some great programs. I think the issue that they face is suboptimal facilities that are difficult to schedule, and even when you're there, they're not optimal from a performance standpoint. They don't have great acoustics. Seating's often uncomfortable, but notwithstanding that, they still get a fair amount of participation. So my kind of inclination is somebody who's also been in the community, which is a lot of arts opportunities. If there were appropriately scaled facility with the right kinds of programs, it wasn't trying to attract national talent and bring people in from all over the region onto Kiowa Island to see these performances, but something directed at providing an outlet, a cultural and artistic outlet for the Kiowa Island and maybe Seabrook and Johns Island community. And that, critically, as you note, you could actually make the economics work. And that's the critical thing. Then I think that is something that is, personally speaking, is well worth exploring. And what I can say is we've been, as part of that deliberative process, looking at some models where there has been success in similar sized communities, in addition to those where they face challenges. So understanding why some are able to have a sustainable arts center, performing arts center program, and why others haven't. And if there's something that can work for Kiowa, then great. But at the end of the day, as the mayor noted, if the conclusion is otherwise, then that's what it is. But I'm certainly keeping an open mind about this, and I'm going to commit to kind of a thoughtful, deliberative process, and we'll try to explore every angle to see if it makes sense or not.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. If it can be done, it'd be a wonderful thing. Just suggesting my own personal bias is in favor of the performing arts. My financial experience tells me that for us, it may be a shiny bauble that looks good that we can't pay for.
Just in closing to the council, to our new council, it's been a good meeting. A lot of.
Can I make one more comment, John? Larry,
go ahead.
Can I ask you to please get involved with the study? I share some of your views. I also had a communication back and forth a little bit with the organizer of the study because I wanted to share some of my experiences. And I think it really requires more involvement of the community. So if I could ask you to bring your skills and experiences right to the table, I think that would be really, really important.
I can certainly bring my experiences, whether or not I have the skills.
Yes, you do. Thank you.
Larry, what's your last name?
Rukowski.
Okay, thanks.
So it's a good meeting, a lot of subjects, and that's good. I think two venues. One is the planning retreat. We'll do everything we can to try to capture all the different subjects, issues, etc. Make sure that they can get in an environment where we're just going to be talking about planning, try to highlight them, articulate them, outline them, whatever. And number two, the comp plan. And I think, Michael, as you just mentioned, even this study that's going on, but the comprehensive plan has an opportunity to engage a lot of community, a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different activities relative to what we're doing. So I think as council, it's unfortunate to say councilmen, because we're all, that is just to continue to encourage the community to get involved in these types of things. And I guess that's the best we can do, is to exercise judgment when the judgment needs to be exercised, but other than that, just to encourage people to get involved. And with that, I'm sorry I left for tea. I am tired.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.